This here is a £17,000 quartz watch. Now it does have some amazing, super clever technology inside of it, but does that render it amazing or just over the top? We're watch geeks, so inherently we live for over engineering. Otherwise we'd all just be wearing £20 quartz watches. There are so many highly celebrated watches that are so over-engineered to the point where the function has destroyed the form. There's usually a balance between design, ergonomics, and performance, which results in a high-performing product that is still wearable and good-looking. We have dive watches that can go down 11,000 meters, down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, but not on the wrist of a diver because no one can dive anywhere near that far. It was strapped to the outside of a submersible. So one, no one actually needs that function. It can't be used for that function, but it also renders the watch pretty much unwearable at 50 millimeters wide and 23 millimeters thick. It's celebrated because it managed to achieve something, but that something is pretty much pointless. Not pretty much, it is pointless. We have watches that can chime out the time just for when you're too lazy to actually rotate your wrist and look at the time, but you're not too lazy to intently listen to these tiny whispers of a chime and then count the major chimes and then the minor chimes and then figure out what the actual time is. Now it's a nice idea and I'll never get bored of listening to a minute repeater, but as a function, it's absolutely pointless. We have wristwatches with tourbillons in it, a feature, a function that was created for pocket watches because pocket watches typically sit in one orientation for a long time, therefore they become inaccurate due to gravity's impact on the balance. But the wristwatches are now strapped to your wrists. It's moving constantly. A tourbillon is completely redundant in a wristwatch. And it then has further negative impacts by the fact that it always makes the watch thicker. They're very complex to make, they're very delicate, and they just cost so much more money to manufacture. Again, I'll never get bored of looking at a tourbillon, but as a function, absolutely pointless. We even have watches that can record or track the phases of the moon. Why do we need that? See, this is my conflict, is that some of these complications I do actually like, regardless of the fact that they are absolutely pointless. We don't need to record or monitor or know what phase the moon is in. But then it just looks nice. It's a nice touch of art and color onto a dial, and it doesn't really impact the thickness. So that one gets a pass. Okay, another challenge is when watch brands bring all of these elements together to create a massively complex, massive watch, like the Vacheron Constantin Solaria that was launched this year. From an engineering point of view, an absolutely incredible piece of kit. But as a wristwatch, it's barely wearable at 45 millimeters wide, and it's barely readable with so many complications on the dial. It is at least a good looking piece of kit compared to Patek Philippe's Grandmaster Chime, which is absolutely hideous and equally as unwearable. Now, all of these complications, be it water resistance or complications like a minute repeater, they're all highly celebrated. They're all highly loved within the watch community, and people argue about who does it better than whoever. But they often result in a negative experience for the end user. Either you end up with a product that is unwearable, or you end up with a product that spends more time with the manufacturer because it's highly complicated and very delicate, spends more time back at the manufacturer getting serviced than it does on the end user's wrist. So at what point is it that we render these watches just over-engineered? Let me come back to this £17,000 quartz watch. This is the FP Journe Elegante. This is actually Britt Pierce's FP Journe Elegante.
So this is my personal FP Journe Elegante, 40 millimeters in Titanite.
And we're actually going to start doing a podcast together. If you want to give us a little follow before we launch over at themovement.podcast. We'll be launching in a couple of weeks. Before I explain my conflicts around this Elegante, I'll take you through the rest of the specifications of it. There's actually two sizes. We've got a 40 millimeter and a 48 millimeter, but those numbers don't really make sense because it's to do with the length of the watch. The 40 millimeter is actually 35 millimeters wide, and the 48 millimeter is actually 40 millimeters wide. The 40 millimeter version is 7.3 millimeters thick, and the 48 millimeter version is 7.9 millimeters thick. They both have screw down crowns, but they have a pretty useless 30 meters of water resistance. The case is made out of grade 5 titanium, and the dial is completely loomed. On the dial, it's all quite self-explanatory. We've got blued hands, we've got sub-seconds, but we've got this tiny little aperture down at 430 with a rotor inside, and this is a motion sensor. And this is the clever part of the watch. The movement inside this watch is what FP Journe call an electromechanical movement. The timekeeping element of the watch is quartz and therefore it's electronic, but the time displaying function of the watch and the motion sensor, that's all mechanical. FP Journe makes the mechanical stuff in-house, and then they use an external Swiss company to make the electronics, and there's actually a microprocessor in this watch that has been bespoke made for this actual movement. Despite it being quartz, there's 18 joules inside. It has a power reserve of 8 years when it's actually being used, but it also has a power reserve of 18 years. That's when it's in standby mode. And the standby mode kicks in. This is the clever part. The standby mode kicks in when that little rotor on the front of the dial doesn't detect any motion for 35 minutes. As soon as that happens, all the mechanical parts of the watch shut down, and then there's this tiny microprocessor inside that still records the time. So even though the watch looks like it's dead because the hands aren't moving, the watch does know what the time is. Now, when that little motion sensor on the front notices movement, the hands then spring back to life because it's recorded the time through the microprocessor. But to save energy even more, when the hands want to display the correct time again, they do so through the shortest route, either moving forward or backwards. Now, this is where I'm conflicted about this watch, because although the results are technically amazing, 18 years of power reserve from one battery is absolutely incredible, and the use of this motion sensor is really smart. And the fact that these hands can move to the correct position, not just when the watch wakes up, but they can do so through the shortest route. That is all super impressive. But how much does that actually benefit the end user? The price of the 40mm version is around £14,000. The price of the 48mm version is £17,000. But the price also gets even more crazy because all FP Journes are incredibly hard to get. When you look at the price of this thing on the grey market, the £17,000 seems actually a bit of a bargain. On the grey market, the 48mm version can go from anything from £40,000 up to £100,000. I like the look of this watch. I think the movement is very impressive. I feel like my only gripe around it is the price. That being said, there's nothing on the market that comes even close to what the Elegante offers. I don't think anyone's taken a quartz movement to that level of watchmaking. When you find a place in the market where you're the only one there, you can kind of make your own price. What do you guys think of the FP Journe Elegante? Is it over-engineered craziness or over-engineered awesomeness? I still feel conflicted. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. If you like to start this video, then hit the subscribe button down there and that little bell icon to get notifications when I drop a new video. If you want to check the podcast that Brett and I'm going to do, jump over to Instagram and give us a little follow at themovement.podcast. Give me a follow at Bark and Jack. And we've got our straps back in stock, our best sellers. We've got all of our grey straps back in stock. We've got the army green, we've got the desert sand, and a whole load more. Oh, and t-shirts and hoodies. Go check out barkandjack.com and check out the goodies that we have over there. Right, I'll let you guys go. I'll see you soon. Take care.